Most businesses market their product. They market, the features, the benefits. In marketing, we talk a lot about offer stacks and we compare the bigger and the better offer stack versus one another. And then most businesses really wonder why their marketing is not working. And the reason is your customers, your clients, they're not going to make a decision logically. Logically, it would make sense to go with the better offer, right? But they're not making decisions logically. They're making them psychologically. And you need to understand that a shift needs to happen in their mind before they make a decision with you. You need to change their whole entire behavior. And in marketing, it's kind of boiled down to four specific behaviors, which we're going to go through in this video. But until you understand that we need to market towards these four behaviors, then you're going to kind of just keep spinning your wheels with marketing and you're going to wonder why it's not working and you're just going to be doing the wrong thing entirely and expecting your product to do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of attraction and getting people to make decisions, make a buying decision and market towards those behaviors. So in this video, I'm going to go through why you need to be marketing to these four behaviors specifically. And then I have a 3-question framework that you can use that's going to inform the way you write copy, build funnels, and run ads entirely. So let's get right into it. Before I get into it, what do I mean by behavior, right? So I mean that this is a specific observable action that your customer can take at any point of their relationship with you or your business. So these are things that are going to affect your marketing ROI. They're going to affect cost to acquire a customer. And these are not vague concepts like engagement or loyalty and things that are very difficult to measure. You can actually measure these. And it essentially is boiled down to these four behaviors that will really ultimately affect your marketing ROI. So the first behavior obviously is going to be buying behavior, right? So buying, when you're marketing your product or your service, you want to market to someone who has never made a purchase decision with you and buy for the first time, right? So what is stopping them? Most of the time it's going to be that they don't trust you. They don't really trust that the outcome is worth the risk, or it's a little bit too scary, or just overall they're going to default to doing nothing because doing nothing is easier than doing something or making a wrong decision, right? You can probably think of where you do that just anywhere in your life, not just when you're shopping or making a buying decision. So you need to start marketing towards that specific behavior, buying as an individual behavior, not just marketing your product and your features and hoping that it's good enough to make people want to buy and then do these other 3 behaviors that I'm going to talk about next. So buying is that first behavior. So when they see your product, in their mind, can you trigger safety? Can you make sure that they are, give them that reassurance that they're making a good decision and that it's an easy decision to make, right? So that is the first behavior. The next behavior is adoption. Adoption is probably the most underrated and probably most universally ignored behavior by marketers, anyone who's advertising online. So when a customer signs up, they do that initial CTA that you're probably advertising, where it's, download a PDF, sign up, purchase, any of those front end things that you're probably advertising right now, but they don't actually start using that product, right? So a lot of people make a very, very valuable PDF, a valuable freebie, valuable lead magnet, but it's made with the intention to be used, right? If it's not, then that's probably a bad way to start marketing, but we won't get into that. But those things are meant to be used, consumed, because they contribute to the overall adoption of your product, of your service. Whether even if it's a front end lead magnet, that will contribute to them making a buying decision with you later, especially if you have like a high ticket service or your product is a little bit more on the expensive side. That adoption of the front end offer, of that initial offer, is super, super key. And you need to market towards that adoption, because if they don't adopt your front end offer or anything that you've put out there for them, then they won't overall make another buying decision later. They won't do these next 2 behaviors that I'm going to go into. And usually adoption is difficult for someone to do because it requires the biggest change in behavior, right? It requires them to change how they think about themselves. If you want them to consume a PDF, they probably usually don't consume PDFs anyway. So now you're trying to get them to change into this new behavior that they've never done. So now you can start seeing how difficult it is to actually get them to change their behavior. And that's why you need to market towards these 4 behaviors. So how can you get them to adopt the PDF that you created, the lead magnet that you created, this new video that you created? how can you make it easy for them to adopt, right? It's usually friction, or it's very complicated and confusing, and it's like you get overwhelmed. It's like, nah, I'm not doing it. Screw it. I'm not doing it. So you probably can think of, again, moments where you've done that, and that's what's going on in your customer's mind, right? So when you start thinking about it like that, it becomes a little bit obvious. So, and then one more thing is that they don't see themselves using that product, and it doesn't feel like something that becomes a part of themselves, right? So again, psychologically, you need to make sure that those shifts are happening in their mind. And that's why it's important, again, to market towards the behavior, because then it shifts your overall entire, the way you form copy, the way you form advertising. So once someone purchases and you need them to use the product to overall, really dive into your world, become a customer who will do these next two behaviors, you need to make sure that they are adopting your product, not just purchasing and shelving it, whether that's shelving it physically or shelving it digitally. The next behavior is return behavior. So a customer who purchases once and decides to come back. A customer who returns is someone who has already adopted as well, because that means they've consumed the product, consumed the service, consumed anything that you've put out there, and they liked it so much that they have returned, right? So what stops this is probably just a weak experience that they might have had. So they might have adopted, they might have purchased, and it was an okay product they consumed, and it was just part of an experience, but it was a weak experience, right? So the brain does not store every memory equally. So it stores all of the peaks and all of the endings. I think there's a book by an author, Daniel Kahneman. I might be saying that wrong, but he has this rule. It's called the peak end rule. So every transaction, every touch point that you have with your customer or your client, it needs to be a very, very high peak, and you need to finish on a very high point, right? So just overall making that experience pleasant. And if you don't design those experiences intentionally, and you kind of just let things fall off, let things like simmer down, then the memories are going to fade and you're going to be forgotten very quickly, right? So, and they're just going to default to whatever option feels easiest for them. They're going to go to that default behavior that I was talking about, adoption, where it might be easier to just do nothing or just keep doing the same thing they've been doing all the time. Because again, decisions are made psychologically and not logically. Even with a better offer, a better product, better service present in front of their face, they're not going to make the decision logically. So that's why you need to be marketing towards the behaviors. I'm going to keep repeating that because that is always going to be true. So that is the third behavior, return behavior. And the last behavior is referral behavior. This is gold. If you work in marketing, you know that referrals are just like the best thing ever. So it's just when a customer tells someone else without you asking them, or being asked or incentivized, or becoming an affiliate to, hey, like this product, this service, this experience that I had with this company, this person was so amazing, like I think you should go. So think about if you are trying to get into shape and your buddy, your friend recommends a trainer, a specific trainer or a specific training plan, specific accessories or whatever, fitness clothes, that is gold. That word of mouth is absolute gold, right? So this behavior is super complex. It's not as easy because customers are actually staking their own social credibility recommending you, right? So referrals are not to be taken lightly, and I think there's a lot of power in having referrals instead of affiliates, right? It requires more heavy lifting, and it's easier to just say, hey, we'll give you 30% commission, whatever percent commission, if you refer us, if you send some customers our way. But there's a lot of power in having marketing so good, creating an experience so good that they're willing to stake their own social credibility on recommending you, right? The brain does not allow for that experience that was genuinely remarkable to just be, just a memory that's kept inside. It's something that needs to be shared, right? So when you create a very great experience and there's a really good product in combination, that is what gets someone to refer your business. So those are the 4 behaviors. To recap: buying, adoption, returning, and also referral. So when you market towards those 4 behaviors, those 4 are, your customer will be at any point in those 4 behaviors, in those 4 stages with your business. So once someone has bought, adopted and returned, purchased multiple times, or just have renewed or whatever, you want them to refer. And again, the referral is super, super powerful, but it's not to be taken lightly. I just want to kind of drive this point home on why behavior and not product, right? So every decision, like I said, is not a logical one. It's a psychological one. Every buying decision, every moment of adoption, every choice to come back, every referral is driven by how your product or your service makes your customer feel. So like how it changes how they are perceived and also what it says about who they are. And the rational case for the product being a very great product will bring someone to the door, but it won't actually bring them in. The psychological shifts, the behavior changes that need to happen are what bring someone in. And that's like the biggest friction point. Like an amazing offer will bring someone to the door, but when it comes to really taking that first step, it all happens in here, right? So think about some very big brands that like are not very logical. Like I don't want to start speaking bad about brands here, but for example, Red Bull, logically the drink tastes bad, right? And I'm talking about just a regular Red Bull. I'm not talking about different flavors and all that kind of stuff. But Red Bull as just an individual energy drink, which you can get all over the world if you've traveled, even if you've been into like third world countries, like you will find a Red Bull. You won't find anything else. You will find a Red Bull. And logically, the drink is not good. The original flavor is not good, but they have a very loyal fan base. They have very high referral rates. Their drinks in bars, like a vodka Red Bull, and it's just the strongest return. They have a strong return behavior, right? And Red Bull is not selling an energy drink per se. They're selling, the feeling of someone who performs at a high level. You've seen all of the athletes, all the stunts that they do, and their marketing is just insane. And they're marketing a very, like, just to put it bluntly, shit tasting drink. Like, it just does not taste good, in my opinion. I'm sorry if you love Red Bull, but that means they got you with their marketing. Same with like just quick examples, like Lululemon is not just selling yoga pants. It's like a woman or even men who wear Lululemon. It's like, okay, like they take care of themselves. They take care of their body. They take time to focus on themselves. And then Nike, for example, is not really selling shoes, running shoes. It's selling the belief of an athlete. Look who they market: LeBron. They market Ronaldo. And if you talk to runners specifically, they're probably not running in Nike shoes. Like if you have friends that are in run clubs or just run in general, they're probably wearing other brands that are not as known. But Nike has such a strong referral rate because of how they make their customers feel. And again, those shifts are happening psychologically. So again, everything is just in the mind. And none of those approaches lead with the product because none of those products are the best. Like technically on paper, they're not the best. But they lead with the behavioral and psychological shifts that they want to produce in their customer's mind, right? All four behaviors follow as a result. People buy because the identity resonates. They adopt because the product becomes part of someone who they are. And then they return because they want to have that feeling all over again. Like you wear Nike because you want to feel like an athlete. Like it's a clean look and you just want to be perceived by others as someone who is athletic. So that's why you buy their products, even if they're subpar to other products on the market. And then you refer because the feeling is so good, the experience is so good that you start recommending literally anything the brand puts out there, right? And you just say good things about them regardless of anything else that they have going on. And that's the whole model. Everything starts with understanding the psychology and the behaviors that you want your customer to do, not the specific product specs. And I think most marketing agencies will never tell you this because if your customers start buying, returning, adopting, referring naturally based on how well you understand them, because you probably already understand them really well, you're just not thinking about it through the lens of, marketing for those behaviors, you stop needing to pay for ads, which means you don't need an agency anymore to manage those ads, and you're not focused on only getting new customers and kind of just trying to turn ads and get an ROI specifically on the ads, which is just a tool of marketing. Because the businesses with the highest referral rates and the most loyal customers rarely need ads. Ads are just something to add on top of a marketing campaign if they need it. It's not their lifeline, and they're not dependent on it. Like the ones with the strongest referral rates, again, they are the ones that are spending less on advertising. And because they are the ones that understood their customer psychology well enough to design an overall experience where those 4 behaviors happen naturally, right? It's not forced. It's just an overall great experience that happens naturally. And that is what marketing was always meant to be. But it got replaced by who can spend the most on ads, right? And the cost of not fixing this is every customer who buys once and doesn't return is not just one lost repeat sale, right? It's a lost referral, and then that referral brings even more customers, and it compounds very quietly. But you don't know this, right? Because if your referral behavior was working the way it should, your customer acquisition costs would drop like crazy. Referred customers would arrive pre-sold, and then they would convert at a higher rate and refer others. And that flywheel is just entirely produced by behavioral design, not ad spend, right? So the longer you ignore this, the longer it stays still, and you're gonna stay stuck. So that's why I'm trying to drive this point home. Okay, so before you build any campaign, write any copy, write any emails, build any funnels, ads, whatever, you need to answer these 3 questions. You need to answer them separately for each individual of the 4 behaviors. So question 1 is what needs to change in how they think. Like what belief is blocking this behavior, and what does the customer need to believe instead? That's question 1. Question 2 is what needs to change in how they feel. What emotional state is preventing the behavior that you want, and what emotional state needs to replace it? Again, you're applying these to all 4 of the behaviors. Question 3 is what needs to change in how they act. What friction is making this behavior harder than it should be, and how do you remove that friction? So you need to answer these 3 questions in those 4 behaviors. Once you answer all of that, you get like the most complete marketing brief, like launch plan you will ever need. Everything else, the copy, the campaigns, ads, funnels, is just an execution on those answers, right? So that's why it's important you ask these 3 questions. Again, it's just 3 questions and 4 behaviors. Here's a quick visual for it. Every marketing decision your business makes lives somewhere in here. Most businesses are only working on one of these, which is just getting the sale, the buying behavior, and ignoring the other 3. And that's where the revenue is leaking. That's where the bottleneck is. So take a screenshot of this, because before you write a single piece of copy, run a single ad, create any marketing campaign or build a funnel, you need to answer these questions. What needs to change in how your customer thinks, feels, and acts for each of the 4 behaviors that we spoke about? That is your entire marketing plan. Everything else, again, is just the execution on this. Okay, now I have one exercise for you. So I want you to pick one behavior that is costing your business right now, that you feel like is just holding you back, that is the bottleneck, whether that be buying, adoption, returns, or referrals. Then answer the 3 questions, right? What needs to change in how they think, how they feel, and how they act. Write it down, have a conversation with AI, and that becomes your next marketing plan, right? That is the direction you want to go in order to solve some of the biggest bottlenecks in your business. You don't need an agency. You can do this on your own. You have the answers. But if you want to work through those 3 questions, apply to your specific business, I do a free 20-minute call just called Sit at the Bar. Just imagine you and I are sitting at the bar. We're just having a conversation about your business, just nerding out a little bit about behavioral sciences and psychology and all that good stuff. There's no pitch, there's no follow-up, just one behavior, 3 questions. And yeah, you'll leave with one specific thing that you can start testing this week to the next quarter. Whatever comes out of it, comes out of it. And yeah, hopefully we'll speak soon.